Stand on a beach and look out at the open sea until the land disappears behind the horizon. Now imagine you have no map, no compass, no engine, no metal, and no knowledge of what, if anything, lies on the other side of that endless water. And imagine that you and your family are about to push off from the shore and paddle straight out into that unknown, trusting your lives to a raft you built with your own hands. This is not a fantasy. This is something our ancestors actually did tens of thousands of years ago, and stands as one of the most astonishing and underappreciated achievements in the entire human story. Today, we are going to explore how ancient humans crossed the oceans, why scientists are certain they did it on purpose, and what those impossible voyages reveal about the minds of the people who made them. The clearest and most powerful evidence comes from the continent of Australia, or more precisely, from the ancient landmass that scientists call Sahul, which once joined Australia, New Guinea, and Tasmania into a single continent when sea levels were lower during the Ice Age. Here is the crucial fact. No matter how far the sea levels dropped, and no matter which route you take, getting from Southeast Asia to Sahul always required crossing open ocean. At the very least, one of the crossings was around 100 kilometers of water, with land completely out of sight, and several shorter crossings of 20 to 30 kilometers along the way. There was no land bridge. There was no way to walk. To reach that continent, our ancestors had to cross the sea, and we know they did, because the evidence of human presence there is overwhelming. Archaeological sites in northern Australia, such as the famous Madjedbebe rock shelter, contain stone tools that have been dated to around 60,000 years ago, and some estimates push the arrival to around 50 to 65,000 years ago. People were living on that continent deep in the Ice Age, which means people crossed the ocean to get there at least that long ago. This makes the peopling of Sahul the oldest solid evidence we have for human beings crossing open water anywhere on Earth. Now, here is the question that has fascinated researchers for decades. Was this an accident, or was it a plan? Could people have simply drifted there by chance, swept out to sea on a floating mat of vegetation after a storm or a flood, washing up on a new shore by pure luck? Scientists have taken this possibility seriously and tested it, and the conclusion that has emerged is striking. The crossing to Sahul does not look like an accident. It looks like a deliberate, planned voyage. The reasoning is powerful. To establish a lasting population on a new continent, you do not need just one lucky person to drift across. You need a viable group, enough men and women to start a new community and keep it going for generations. A single accidental castaway is a dead end. A planned expedition of multiple people deliberately setting out together is how you actually colonize a new land. The genetic and archaeological evidence points to exactly that kind of intentional settlement. There is more. Researchers studying the winds and currents of the region have found that for a long stretch of this period, the seasonal winds were actually favorable for making the crossing, which would have helped deliberate voyagers reach their destination. And the sheer number of crossings required, several separate stretches of open water, argues against a one-time fluke. People were moving directionally across the sea, again and again, in a way that pure accident struggles to explain. The most credible interpretation, held by many scientists, is that anatomically modern humans had developed the capacity to plan and carry out open-sea voyages lasting several days by at least 50,000 years ago. They looked at the horizon, decided to go, built what they needed, and went. So what did they actually sail in? This is where we hit an honest and humbling limit of what we can know, because the boats themselves have not survived. Watercraft from that era would have been made of wood, bamboo, reeds, vines, and other plant materials, all of which rot away completely over tens of thousands of years. We have the destinations, the people who arrived, but not the vessels that carried them. So we have to reason carefully about what they most likely used. Researchers broadly agree that the first watercraft were probably rafts rather than carved canoes, because building a raft requires far simpler woodworking than hollowing out a dugout. A large raft of bamboo or other buoyant wood lashed together with plant fibers and perhaps fitted with a simple sail or paddled by hand is the kind of craft that could plausibly have carried a group across those Ice Age seas. This points to a technology we almost never think about when we imagine ancient humans, which is the technology of string, rope, and binding. To lash a raft together, you need cordage, fibers twisted into strong cord that can hold logs or bamboo in place against the pull of the waves. The ability to make rope and to tie effective bindings was an essential and often invisible part of crossing the ocean. The mariners who reached Sahul must have brought sophisticated fiber technology with them, the humble but crucial skill of turning plants into rope strong enough to trust your life to. Behind every great voyage was a great deal of expert knot-tying and cord-making, a quiet craft without which the boats would have simply fallen apart at sea. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about these crossings is not the boats or the rope, it is the mind required to make them. Think about what it takes to push off from a familiar shore and head out toward a horizon where you cannot see any land at all. You need to believe, or at least to gamble, that something is out there. You need to plan for a voyage of days on the open water, carrying enough food and fresh water to survive. You need to read the sea, the winds, the stars, the flight of birds, and the drift of clouds for clues about where land might lie. And you need the courage, or the desperation, to commit yourself and your family to that uncertainty. These were not simple people stumbling blindly. They were navigators, planners, and risk-takers, equipped with the same kind of mind you carry in your own head. The crossing of the oceans is in many ways a monument to the modern human capacity for imagination, the ability to conceive of a place you have never seen and to set out deliberately to reach it. It is worth pausing to honor how deep this heritage runs. The descendants of those first ocean crossers, the indigenous peoples of Australia and New Guinea, carry a connection to one of the oldest seafaring achievements in human history, a journey made by their ancestors across unknown waters tens of thousands of years before the pyramids, before writing, before farming. Long before any of the things we usually call the beginnings of civilization, human beings were already building boats, reading the sea, and crossing oceans to find new worlds. When you step back, the crossing of the oceans changes how we should think about our ancient ancestors entirely. We sometimes picture them as bound to the land, wandering on foot across continents, but the sea was not always a wall to them. For at least 50,000 years, it has also been a road, a frightening and dangerous road, but a road nonetheless, one that human courage and ingenuity learned to travel. They had no compass and no charts. They had rafts of wood and bamboo, ropes of twisted fiber, knowledge of the winds and stars, and a restless, planning, imagining mind. And with nothing more than that, they pushed off from the edge of the known world and paddled out toward the horizon, into the open ocean, to discover what lay beyond. That they succeeded, and that their descendants are still here, is one of the quiet miracles of the human story.